Hi, and welcome to this group of candidate forums put on by the League of Women Voters of Elmhurst. I am Jan Dorner, and Dorothy McGuire and I are co-presidents of the Elmhurst League. The League of Women Voters is an issues-oriented, volunteer, member-directed organization that neither supports nor opposes any candidates or parties. We do act on issues after member study and consensus. We are committed to open, responsive, and effective government brought about by informed, involved people with membership open to both men and women 16 years and older. This year, the League commemorates its 100th anniversary, and the Elmhurst League joins over 700 local leagues to celebrate this historic milestone. The League's historic commitment to register, educate, and mobilize voters is not only stronger, but more effective than ever, utilizing such tools as IllinoisVoterGuide.org, a cutting-edge election information website utilized by Illinois voters each election cycle. This site will go live the first day of early voting, February 6th. Thank you again for attending or watching these forums to become an educated voter.
Hi, my name is Gilda Carew. I am the moderator for this forum, which will have the Democratic candidates for the county or auditor. I am with the League of Women Voters of the Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Buffalo Grove area. I do not vote in this district, so I am neutral about the candidates and do not have any opinions. So we try to make sure that these forums are fair and that there is no favoritism. This is a primary election that is coming up, which means that you need to take either a Democratic or Republican ballot. The candidates today will be on the Democratic ballot. The Republicans who are running, Bob Grogan and Jeffrey Mack, did not respond to the League's invitations to participate today, so you will not be hearing from Republican candidates, and it's not because they were not invited. So we will have the Democratic candidates, Bruce Fogarty and Bill White, and the way the forum will work, both candidates will have 1 minute to make an opening statement. Then they will have 1 minute to answer questions. There were 3 questions that were given to the candidates in advance by the League of Women Voters, and then we are also taking questions from the audience. These should be questions that can be answered by both candidates, and they should not be statements or any kind of attack questions. We do ask that you take a note card and fill out the questions and give them to one of the League members in the back of the room, who will bring them here so that the question can be asked. We also ask that you turn off any of your electronic devices or put them on airplane or do not disturb mode so that there is no disruption during the forum. And we also ask that you refrain from any kind of reactions or applause or noise during the forum so that we can proceed in a civilized manner. So with that, I'd like to get started, and we'll go alphabetically. So Bruce Fogarty, you have 1 minute for an opening statement.
A robust auditor's office is an important feature of any county government. It has the potential of keeping the parties honest, having regular reports to the county board and elected officials on their operation, and it is an important consideration. Unfortunately, the auditor's office is little understood, and it's also down ballot. Electing a candidate who has the proper background is an important vote. To have someone with the right technical skills, the right perspective, can only enhance transparency and allow for a more informed electorate.
Thank you. Bill White.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bill White. I'm running for auditor in the Democratic primary on March 17th, and I'll be asking for your vote on March 17th. A little about me, I'm from Downers Grove. I attended South High School. I've been married for 29 years, and my wife and I have lived in the same house in Downers Grove. We have 2 adult children. Twice I've been elected to public office. First to the District 99 Board of Education, where I was chosen to serve as school board president. Later on, I was elected to the Downers Grove Village Council. I'm proud to say that both the school district and the village are transparent, they're efficient, and they return fair value to the community in exchange for our tax dollars. I am the right choice to be the next county auditor, as I have experience with good government. I've experienced working well with others to collaborate and build consensus. I will be an advocate for good government, and as a Democrat, I understand that being an advocate for good government starts by being an advocate for government. Again, I ask for your vote on March 17th.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, we do have timekeepers seated across from us. They will hold up signs at 30 seconds and 15 seconds and stop. And when they hold up the stop sign, I will ask you to stop speaking. We'll now move to the questions. And the first question will be answered first by Bill White. And the question is, what will you contribute to the county auditor position?
You ready? Okay. Well, more than the other countywide offices, to be effective, an elected auditor must work well with others. Under Illinois law, the auditor has surprisingly little authority to act. The auditor must have the ability to communicate, advocate, and persuade other officials to act. The auditor reviews, analyzes, audits the operations and finances of the various county departments, such as the sheriff, the court clerk, recorder of deeds, and so forth. They advise and make recommendations to the county board, but the other countywide officers have no obligation to accept those recommendations. The ability to persuade and communicate is essential for an auditor to be successful. I have experience facilitating consensus among decision makers in governmental settings. In addition to being elected to the school board and the village council, I served on the zoning board of appeals for 20 years, and I was on the Downers Grove Comprehensive Plan Review Committee. I have the experience and temperament to collaborate well with my fellow elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Fogarty?
I will be able to bring a 360-degree perspective to county operations and fiscal compliance. I have over 25 years of experience in business and accounting, finance, taxation, and system implementation. That is in 3 different industries and about 5 different companies. I also have taught accounting for a period of time of 5 or 6 years at 4 different schools to graduate students and undergraduate schools in DuPage County. The combination of my broad accounting and auditing experience and my management experience in industry should allow me to bring value to the auditor's office.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by Bruce Fogarty, and the question is, are there areas of DuPage County government that are not included under the auditor responsibilities that should be?
I believe any time money is dispensed to organizations outside the county's purview should be subject to audit. That includes the DuPage County Airport and some of the funding, some of the organizations that the county funds. In some cases, that may require a change in state law. This kind of after the money audit is very much a feature of accounting in industry. Insurance companies, for instance, have rights to audit the records of some of their client businesses. Banks also have that purview on loan agreements. I think the auditor's office should be able to basically audit anything where county dollars go.
Thank you. Bill White?
Okay. By state law, the county auditor is responsible for the departments and operations that are under the jurisdiction of the county board or any of the 8 countywide elected officials, which are the recorder of deeds, the sheriff, the treasurer, the regional office of education, the coroner, the court clerk, the county clerk, and the state's attorney. There's other separate DuPage County governments that are outside the scope of the structure. The county health department, the forest reserve, the housing authority, water commission, and while the auditor may want to look at where money goes, those are independent governments established by state law with their own auditors and their own processes. Changing this would require action by the state government and would involve far more than simply adjusting the duties of the auditor. Expanding the scope of the auditor to include these other governments would not be a priority for me. My priority would be to establish a good rapport and strong lines of communication with the county board and the 8 countywide elected officials I mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. First, the next question will be answered first by Bill White. The question is, how will you convince voters the auditor's position is important enough to care about?
Well, this is actually a very hard question, but it goes to the heart of why we have an elected county auditor. I just mentioned before the other countywide elected officials, Recorder of Deeds, Sheriff, Treasurer, and so on. They all have larger budgets, more staff, and they have the authority to actually run their department. The auditor doesn't have any real authority other than to make recommendations and investigate, but an independent auditor remains important. Let me explain it this way. Back in the early 1990s, the German company BASF ran an ad campaign with a slogan. At BASF, we don't make the products you buy, we make the products you buy better. The elected auditor doesn't record deeds, doesn't prosecute people, doesn't solve stormwater, but the elected auditor is in a position to make all of these departments more transparent, more efficient, and better return fair value to the community in exchange for our tax dollars. As auditor, I will be a vigilant watchdog fighting for transparency, for efficiency, and for the effective delivery of services. And we make the voters care by showing our fellow elected officials. Thank you.
Bruce Fogarty?
This, to my mind, is actually fairly straightforward. Public engagement. Like I mentioned in my opening comments, the auditor's office is a little understood and is not publicized. There's something that a lot of government agencies do, and that's called a roadshow. Bring the auditor's office to the communities, open houses, have press releases, have road shows at public libraries, that type of thing. I think this can only enhance the democratic process and increase transparency because the auditor could discuss some of the shortcomings in the county's operations, and that would put pressure, at least indirectly, on other elected officials and county board members to address some of the shortcomings that are identified by robust audits.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by Bruce Fogarty. The question is, what will be your involvement in the budget process?
The auditor's office doesn't have a whole lot of role in the budgeting cycle other than to prepare their own budgets, their own department's budget. However, it could probably be used strategically because once you know what the budget is, you start to look for something called a budget versus actual variance, which is a common technique used in every responsible corporation in America, regardless of size. Budget versus actual, it's a variance analysis. So by taking a look at the budget, the auditor's office can start to anticipate what kind of testing and what kind of audits it would like to perform during the year.
Thank you. Bill White?
Okay. Under Illinois law, under the structure of the auditor's office, the auditor has no direct input into the budget process. That said, if the auditor has strong lines of communication with all of the county board members, there creates an opportunity to facilitate consensus. DuPage County is going to be very important in the next cycle because DuPage County is entering uncharted territory where we will leave one-party rule. And we're going to have a situation with a divided county board where we're going to need genuine collaboration and genuine consensus on the county board to pass a budget. So the auditor has no formal role in the budget-making process, but as auditor, I would hope to get the voluntary collaboration and consensus among the other county board members to see if we can reach a budget everyone can agree on. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question goes to Bill White first. The question is, what qualifications are important for the auditor's staff, and what involvement does the auditor have in hiring and firing?
The auditor has a staff of several employees. It's the smallest budget, smallest department of any department. It's essential that we hire the people with the highest qualifications in terms of audit experience, accounting experience, database experience, to be on the cutting edge of governmental auditing, governmental accounting. That's different than private sector. There's a lot of overlap, but it's different. Since it's a small team, the auditor needs a team with the skill set to fully investigate everything, and the elected auditor then takes that data and engages with the other elected officials and with the county board. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Fogarty?
Of the three other candidates, I am probably one of the few that has actually had to hire accountants before. The types of things I look for in a candidate is curiosity, critical thinking skills, and an ability to get along with others. I've been an auditor in my previous professional life, and you really have to think outside the box. So curiosity and critical thinking are essential. The other things that are important is some sort of an aptitude for technology and to be able to look beyond the numbers and the problem immediately before them, because there's a Six Sigma characteristic where you have to ask why 3 times before you can start to get to the truth. You need a persistent streak in anyone you hire as well.
Thank you. The next question follows up on this, and it will be answered first by Bruce Fogarty. And the question is, how big is the auditor's office, and how much staff and experience do you have in supervising?
The current staff, at least as of 2 years ago, is 7 people. Budget was $578,000. For the last 10 years, I have supervised staffs of anywhere from 2 to 5 individuals. I've run accounting initiatives that were nationwide in scope and have included up to 100 team members. So I have had significant supervisory experience. In addition, I was an adjunct instructor at 4 universities for a period of 6 years, and having to use motivational tools and deal with up to 30 different personalities in a classroom, I'm very accustomed to that.
Thank you. Bill White?
Okay. I agree with Bruce about the size of the office and the budget, and it's the smallest of all of the countywide offices. I've worked for many decades as an attorney in a small office where we have 5 to 7 employees. It's fluctuated up and down from time to time. I've also been the chair of numerous governmental committees. I was the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I was chair of the school board. I was vice chair of the village council. I was chair of an ad hoc committee that rewrote the entire comprehensive plan. So I have considerable experience working with small groups, getting consensus and having the small groups be effective in accomplishing our goals. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Bill White, and the question is, how much time is involved running this office, and what is your availability?
My understanding is it's a full-time job, and I would devote full time to it, 40, 50, 60 hours a week.
Thank you. Bruce Fogarty?
It is a full-time job, and it is probably less important on how much time you spend and more important how you spend your time. The current auditor's office does not, to my knowledge, does not have a strategic plan. If you do not have a strategic plan, you can't have like I said earlier, a 360-degree view of the county's operations and where you want to go with your audits. It is important that the auditor's office is fully engaged in audits all areas of county operations. Currently, the auditor's office does only the minimum required by state law. I think the people of DuPage County deserve better, and it's only a healthy feature of county government.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Bruce Fogarty. The question is, why are you running and why do you want to be the DuPage County Auditor?
About 3 years ago, I was perusing, because I am a professional accountant, I was perusing the auditor's website, and I noticed that most of the postings on the auditor's website were several years out of date. There had been no postings for at least 3 years. And that got me thinking. So I exchanged emails with the current auditor several times, and he, amazingly enough, started to post things out on the website, number one. And number two, indicated that some of the more sensitive operational audits and compliance audits he didn't publish because he felt he didn't want to jeopardize county operations. I don't buy it. The state of Illinois and the Internal Revenue Service both post, as a matter of course, their internal audit results, as do government agencies. I think the auditor's office could be more robust.
Thank you. Bill White?
I chose to run for the office of county auditor to bring my past experience with good government to the county level, especially at the time when DuPage County is going to be entering uncharted waters politically. For the first time ever in the history of the county, we're looking at very likely having a Democratic majority on the county board. At a minimum, there's going to be divided county government. I've seen what good government looks like. I've been personally involved with governments that are efficient, transparent, and return value to the community. And I want to bring that experience to help build consensus and collaboration when we may have a divided county board.
Thank you. And seeing that there are no other questions from the audience, we will now move to the closing statements. Before we do that, however, I'd like to remind everyone that the information about these candidates and all of the candidates can be found on IllinoisVoterGuide.org. So before you go to the polls, this will be live starting February 6th, and all of the candidates on your ballot will be listed. Again, as a reminder, because this is a primary election, you will have to declare either as a Republican or a Democrat and take a ballot. So if you want to vote for either of these candidates, you would have to take the Democratic ballot. And Election Day is on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, but early voting starts early in March. So I would encourage all of you to go out and vote and to look at the voter guide before doing so. Now we will move to the closing statements. The first closing statement will be from Bill White.
I wish to thank the Elmhurst League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. We've only had a short amount of time to discuss the role and purpose of the county auditor, but hopefully each of us Bruce and I have added to the public understanding of the position. The auditor doesn't deliver services to the public or the community, but they're tasked with facilitating transparency, efficiency, and the effective delivery of service by every other department within the jurisdiction of the county or any of the 8 countywide elected officials. We need a county auditor committed to working well with the other departments. I have the experience with good government, and I have the experience working well with others to collaborate and build consensus. I thank you again, and I ask you to vote for William Bill White on March 17th. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Fogarty.
I too would like to thank both Bill and the League for having this forum. I also think it's an important feature of our electoral process. And I too am asking for your vote in the March primary. I'm very well qualified for this position. I believe my 25 years of experience in multiple industries and multiple businesses gives me a unique position to bring a discerning eye to county operations. I also think that it is important that whoever is elected, that the voters choose the candidate that is going to demonstrate independence and independent judgment in their approach to the job. The auditor's office is so important and I believe is so underutilized in DuPage County. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I would like to thank both of our candidates, Bruce Fogarty and Bill White, for their participation today and also for their great answers to the questions. They were very well thought out and responsive to the questions that were asked. So at this time, let's give both candidates a big hand. Welcome, and this was supposed to be the candidates forum for the Recorder of Deeds. There are 2 candidates running, Ron Almiron and Babette Holder-Youngberg. However, Ms. Youngberg was unable to attend, so it is League of Women Voters policy to allow a candidate who otherwise would be participating in the forum to make a 2-minute statement about his or her candidacy. We do not have what we call empty chair forums where questions are asked of the candidate. If anybody does have questions for the candidate, they can speak with him afterward, but at this point, he will be making a 2-minute statement. The candidate who is present today is Republican Ron Almiron. Again, the primary that will be held on March 17th and for which early voting will begin earlier is a primary that requires that you declare either as a Republican or a Democrat. So to vote for Mr. Almiron or his opponent, you would have to take a Republican ballot. And again, just to be clear, you cannot split and say, well, I'm going to vote for a Republican in this race and a Democrat in this race. No, you are declaring a party and you have to vote for the candidates in that party, whichever ballot that you take. And as a reminder, the League of Women Voters does have information available on all candidates at illinoisvoterguide.org. That will be live on February 6th. So you're encouraged to go to that website to get information on candidates before you vote. So at this point, I would like to introduce Ron Almiron, who will be giving us a 2-minute statement. Mr. Almiron.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity to the League of Women Voters of Elmhurst. My name is Ron Almiron. I'm born and raised and schooled here in the Midwest. My wife is Victoria. Our sixth grader son, Max, goes to St. Michael Parish School in downtown Wheaton. He is named our family pet, a white cat named Chubbs, Robert. I'm a real estate transactional and litigation attorney licensed for the past 25 years. I also represent clients on business and employment matters, so I have a good sense of business acumen. I'm running for the Recorder's Office because I want to continue serving my local community in a way that best utilizes my professional education and experience. I'm a great fit for the office. I've experienced managing and voting on budgets for many boards, like the Wheaton Mosquito Abatement District, where I've been treasurer for the past 4 years. For more information, please visit my candidate website, ronalmiron.com. In this race, I'm the only candidate who has saved the taxpayers' money by voting to keep property taxes low. I have the public's trust. Under a program I will start called Secure-DuPage, existing deeds will be digitally encrypted to make them tamper-proof, thereby preventing fraud. This is important for landowners because deeds evidence title. Thus, I will protect the property rights of all DuPage County landowners. I will also build on Mr. Fred Buckholz's achievements to make the Recorder's Office more transparent and accessible by looking up to opening up the Recorder's Office perhaps one evening a week or a Saturday a month. Trust in government begins with trust in public records, like the land records kept in the Recorder's Office. I hope that you will consider my candidacy, and I believe my experience will render that I will be a successful recorder. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And let's give Mr. Almiron a big hand for coming today and sharing his views.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Candidate Forum for the 18th Judicial Circuit Court Clerk candidates. It is sponsored by the Elmhurst chapter of the League of Women Voters. Thanks first to the candidates for participating in this forum. Without your participation, we would not have a forum.
Thank you.
Also, thanks to the audience who is here today and to those who may be watching on recording. My name is Carol Tidwell. I'm a longtime League member and a moderator who has been trained to conduct candidate forums. I do not live or vote in DuPage County or the 18th Judicial District. We'll be following League rules today for the forum. We'll start by asking a number of prepared questions which were provided to the candidates ahead of time. We will also ask some written questions from the audience. League members are circulating cards and will collect them throughout the forum. All questions will be reviewed by members of the League for appropriateness. For example, we do not ask questions of just one candidate. Not all questions may be asked due to time constraints, and similar questions may be combined. The candidates will each have 1 minute to present an opening statement in turn, and they are seated alphabetically. They will have 1 minute to respond to each question, also in turn, and at the end of the forum, they'll have 1 minute to make a closing statement. Our crack timekeepers will keep us on track today in the interest of time and fairness to all candidates. There'll be a warning sign at 30 seconds, at 15 seconds, and then a stop sign. The candidate that is speaking should wind down at the 15-second warning and then stop speaking when the stop sign appears. We will rotate between the two candidates as to who has the opportunity to go first for questions. We ask that you silence your cell phones, and as per forum rules, the candidates will not use their cell phones or other electronic devices during the forum. I ask that the audience not respond or react to candidate answers during the forum. There will be time at the end for a round of applause for all candidates. All right, and we will begin now with opening statements, first from candidate Adams.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting me here today. My name is Candace Adams, and I'm running for Clerk of the Circuit Court. A little bit about me. I'm a practicing attorney downtown. I run a department overseeing attorneys and other staff members throughout the firm. I'm also a mother of 3. We live over in Lisle. I am running for this position for 3 reasons primarily. First, to help with the modernization of the systems. Currently, we have a system that's about half paperless, half not, and I want to increase the speed at which we're moving to a paperless system similar to the federal courts. Second, I want to help with the training of those systems. Currently, we have clerks in our courtrooms that are tasked with both handling the court call and helping people learn the systems. And third, and most important to me, is I want to help with community outreach. This department houses a lot of resources that should be made known to our community members in a better way. Thank you.
Candidate Khan.
Hi, my name is Moon Khan, and I'm running for a drastic change in DuPage County politics. As you know, in the last 30 years, DuPage County has not changed the government. However, outside, it has changed dramatically. DuPage County government is still one race, one face, one color, one religion. Everything is the same. We want to change that. And in the next, after 30 years, there will be new changes in the administration. The current incumbent Republican, he has been there for 16 years. And now this is the time to reflect the growing diversity and the newness of this county. To know more about me, please go on my website, moonkhan.com. This 10-year interview will not be enough. Go there and what I have been doing for the last 30 years to make changes.
Thank you. The first question will go to candidate Khan, and that question is, why should voters care about the election of this position?
Clerk of the Circuit Court is a non-judicial office, an administrative office, and it performs myriad of activities, serving as centers of emergency order of protection, traffic, bond, divorce, court, bankruptcy, court interpretation, passport services, probate, jury, just name it. Being a custodian of thousands of legal forms, the clerk's office employs a few hundred employees and manages a budget of over $8 million. These services are performed in designated rooms at the Judicial Center and also at 5 satellite locations. As you know, I am from IT field. This office needs IT solutions. We are in IT age, not in the printing age. It's extremely important that we should have one person from that background.
Candidate Adams.
Thank you. The reason why it's important that this election is important is because us as taxpayers pay a significant amount of money to the person holding this position. And we really need to examine, are we getting what we're paying for? The person that's holding this position has the opportunity to provide our community with a tremendous amount of resources that happens in other counties that is not currently happening in ours. Things like expungement days or amnesty programs, where we clear a pathway for our citizens and members of the DuPage County to have better access to jobs and military and better rankings in military. So the reason why this election matters is because we want to make sure that the amount that we're paying for this position and how our tax dollars are being spent through this position are going to programs and resources that our community values. That's why I'm running for this position. Thank you.
Candidate Khan.
I worked as a systems analyst for the DuPage Health Department, director of IT for DuPage Housing Authority, and worked for 10 years for Cook County Clerk David Orr's office in its tax and IT divisions. Other than IT experience, I hold MBA and MA degrees. Also, I have management experience working in 3 countries. The clerk's office is a custodian of the records, electronic filing, and online ticket payment. The circuit court clerk's office accepts over 320,000 new cases every year. Considering my extensive experience in municipal and IT fields, majority of elected officials representing DuPage County have endorsed me. And they include Harvard legal graduate from graduate, Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, Dan Pappas, who has studied at Stanford, and all kinds of people you can see on my flyer.
Okay, let me say the question again in case I didn't say it the last time. The second question is, what experience, we're on question 3, aren't we?
I'm on question 2.
We're on question 2.
Yeah.
I did the right thing.
This is real life. What can I tell you? Question 2, what experience do you bring to the job that sets you apart?
So I'm currently a practicing attorney, and I run a department that handles cases throughout the United States. So I'm very often accessing documents throughout clerk of the circuit courts, positions throughout the United States. So specifically, I have a lot of background in knowing what the clerk of the circuit court does and what information that it holds. Prior to becoming an attorney, I ran departments of over 100 people with budgets into the multi-millions, similar to this department does. I have a strong background working with hirings and firings in HR, how to handle disciplinary actions and things of that nature. And I have a strong understanding of what happens in a courtroom and how judges could be an integral part into how the clerk's office runs, and knowing which resources to access and to get opinions from as to how to make the department better. Based on my experience as an attorney and overseeing a staff is why I think I'm qualified for this position. Thank you. Now we're on 3.
All right, question 3 goes first to candidate Adams. How do you balance security of your records while keeping the records accessible to the public?
Thank you. So certainly there's a line of what should be public information and what should be private information. And I think as a voter, there's certain information that you should be entitled to and not, right? I think that when it involves information relating to my children or activities that are going on with them, that's a record that I would like to keep private. So in my own personal life, I have security systems on my computers and IT that protect people, or hopefully protect me from ever being hacked or have information that I don't intend to be accessed. Now, to be quite blunt, I don't have a lot of information about me personally that can't be accessed, and that's fine with me. In my early life, I was involved with the situation that, unfortunately, to me, spent a lot of time in the newspaper, so I've had a lifetime of having the public access records to me. And that's okay. I think that the voters should be entitled to know what your voting history is, what your position on opinions are, and matters like that. Thank you.
Candidate Khan, question 3 to you.
I really appreciate your question, because that justifies and that shows that this position needs a person with IT ability. Security is not just locking your doors. Security is IT security, how you can provide. With your legal background, you cannot do that. You have to have IT solution to these forms. And I will not boast that I know everything. Once I am there in that situation, I will establish a legal and also digital advisory committee to suggest reforms that can be implemented within 3 months of assuming my office. And as I told you, this is not the printing age. This is IT age. We need to have solutions, technological solutions, and also managerial experience. I have worked in 3 countries. I have an MBA degree, and also I have experience in IT. I'm the right candidate for this position.
Candidate Adams, did you want me to repeat the question?
Yes. I think we moved through them.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
She already answered this question.
Yes, she did. Candidate Khan, the next question is for you. What is the most important aspect of the circuit court clerk duties?
Well, in the beginning, I already mentioned to you, I outlined everything, that it is not one job, it's a myriad of jobs and services. As I told you, it has traffic, bond, divorce court, bankruptcy, arbitration, guardianship, probate, jury duty, everything is included. And when you go on their website, the first thing you will see, online filing, and then online ticketing and depositing money. Those things can be done and can be managed only by a person who has any kind of IT experience. This is a non-judicial office. The incumbent is not an attorney. Before that also he was not an attorney. So this is not an attorney position. This is a position for 21st century where it needs IT solution, and I am the perfect person for that.
Thank you for the question. My answer to that is fair and equal access to our court systems. Right now, we need to develop plans and ways to allow the members of our community to be able to access our courts, because that is the primary function of the clerk of the circuit court, where to find your forms, where to find your court date, where you learn how to pay your fines, or if you're a witness to a case, where to go, if you're a juror, how to get there. So my answer to this question is to have fair and equal access. One of the things that's happening in communities around us is reminders to our community members through text messaging, right? We're in a system or time where we've moved into how we communicate with each other. And keeping up with how we're communicating through text message, through emails potentially, changing the systems of how we reach our people so that they know when they have court and how to access our systems and our resources is is what I think is important with this position. Thank you.
The next question goes first to Candidate Adams, and that question is this. What hiring experience do you have with hiring and managing employees of the clerk's office?
Thank you for the question. So before going to law school, I worked for a company that is nationwide. and had to hire and fire employees pretty regularly and spent a great deal of my time working on HR issues. At one location, I was the HR manager, so I'm very familiar with how to do training and how to do hiring, how to do firing, how to do raises, and all of the HR aspects that come along with hiring employees. In my current position, I oversee attorneys and other staff members throughout the firm. It's a large firm that's currently growing. And as part of that process, I am involved in our hiring, I'm involved in our firing, I'm involved in placement of employees throughout the firm, and that's something that I think that makes me uniquely qualified for this position since I've done that for some time now. Thank you.
Candidate Khan.
Well, as I told you, I lived and worked in 3 countries. It looks like I had several reincarnations. So when I was in India, to be honest with you, I was selected for a civil service position. And that position is, to get that position, you have to pass a national exam. And that is as hard as passing your law exam. Believe me, and I was qualified, and I worked for that. And for that position, I was supposed to manage a county-wide position. And I did that. Then I moved to another country, and then I came here. I have worked in offices, in municipal governments. I am the person who has the experience of good governance. I worked under DuPage County, Cook County Clerk David Orr's office, who was the pioneer in good governance. He was my mentor, he was my guru, and I have learned that. I worked for DuPage County Health Department, DuPage County Housing Authority, and the clerk's office. I am the person who has the experience everywhere, and I know where the bodies are buried. I can go and start working on that.
Thank you. We do not have further questions from the audience, so we'll start with our closing statements, please. First, to close will be Candidate Khan. You have 1 minute.
Friends, for more information, please go on my website, moonkhan.com. And you will be glad to know that I have been endorsed by Raja Krishnamurthy, Michael Fredericks, Tara Costa Howard, David Orr, Diane Pappas, Anne Stava Murray, Dawn Dessart, Julie Renahan, Laura Elman, Deb Conroy, Christina Castro, Michelle Musman, and there are a lot of people who are lining up. Believe me, in primary, it never happens that a candidate will be endorsed by that many elected positions. I am the person who represents 33% of people who don't come out in the government offices. But they own gas stations, they own Subway, they are business people, and they are afraid of politics. I am the personification of those people. I want to be the voices of those people. Elect me and see, you will see a new perspective. moonkhan.com.
Thank you. Candidate Adams, your closing, please.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today. I believe that I'm the candidate most uniquely qualified for this position because of my background as an attorney and because of the experience that I've had accessing clerk of the court systems throughout the United States and volunteering with the clerk of the court on expungement summits in Cook County. I believe that it's time in DuPage County to know where our money is going and to have those resources available more easily to our members and our residents. I believe that with my strong working history, my strong HR background, my strong ability to know the importance of what it means to be able to access an expungement, to access amnesty days, to waive some of the fines that you shouldn't have to pay, I'm the candidate most qualified for this position. I ask that you visit my website at CandiceAdams2020.com to get more information about me and why exactly I'm running. And I'd just like to thank you again for the opportunity today.
Thank you, candidates. That ends our forum. We have many to thank. First, you, the candidates, and I call for a round of applause for them, please. We will not be having a forum today for the suitor vacancy in the 18th Circuit Court judicial candidates. Candidate Wilson did not respond to our invitation. but candidate Jill Oddie did. So it is our practice and policy that when this happens, while we do not have a single person or a single candidate forum, we do ask the candidate who did respond positively to provide a 2-minute statement. And I'd ask that you do that now, please.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters in Elmhurst for the opportunity to introduce myself to you. My name is Jill Oddie. I am a Democratic candidate for Circuit Court Judge. A little bit about myself personally. I have been a DuPage resident for almost 20 years, raising a couple of teenagers here with my husband also of 20 years. Professionally, I have been an attorney for 25 years, and I have tried hundreds of cases. That's the short version. To give you some more detail, I worked at the Kane County State's Attorney's Office for 5 years, where I tried numerous cases. I did not keep track of them because I didn't know I would need that information 25 years later. But I can tell you it was in traffic misdemeanor court, DUI, felony drug court, and mental health courts. I then moved to the Illinois Attorney General's office, and I've been there for almost 20 years. I now am in a civil practice, and I have tried cases of personal injury, property damage, contracts, wrongful death, and workers' compensation. I am currently the chief of the Workers' Compensation Bureau at the Illinois Attorney General's office. I supervise 16 lesser experienced attorneys, and I do love my job because, like a judge, we are blessed with doing the right thing. The reason I am running for this job is I believe that the temperament of judges is important, and the judge sets the tone for her courtroom. And the way that that is best done is leading by example. I have been in the courtrooms where defendants have sworn at me, a judge was a bully for a matter of about a year, defendants have had feces on their shoes, and I've been yelled at by opposing counsels, and I've learned how to handle those situations. If you would like more information on me, please visit jillforjudge.com, and I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Candidate Forum for the 18th Judicial Circuit Court Judicial Candidates for the O'Shea vacancy. This is sponsored today by the Elmhurst chapter of the League of Women Voters. Thanks first to the candidates for participating in this forum. Without your being here, we would not have a forum. Also, thank you to the audience for being here today, as well as those who may be watching a recording. My name is Carol Tidwell. I'm a longtime League member and a moderator who has been trained to conduct candidate forums. I do not live or vote in DuPage County or the 18th Judicial District. We're following League rules for the forum today. We will start by asking a number of prepared questions which were provided to the candidates ahead of time. Then we will ask some written questions from the audience. League members are circulating cards and will collect your questions throughout the forum if you wish. All questions will be reviewed by members of the League for appropriateness. For example, we do not ask questions of just one candidate. Not all questions may be asked due to time constraints, and similar questions may be combined. The candidates will each have 1 minute to present an opening statement in turn. They'll have 1 minute to respond to each question, and at the end of the forum, they will each have 1 minute to make a closing statement. Our timekeepers will keep us on track in the interest of time and fairness to all candidates. One will hold up a warning sign at 30 seconds, then 15 seconds, and then stop. The candidate who is speaking should wind down at the 15-second marker and stop speaking when the stop sign appears. The candidates are seated alphabetically from my right to my left by party. So the Democrats are on my right and the Republicans are on my left. We will rotate which candidate has the opportunity to be first to answer a question. Please silence your cell phones during the forum. As per forum rules, the candidates will not use their cell phones or other electronic devices during the forum, except for the purpose of reading notes for an opening or a closing statement. I ask that the audience not respond or react to candidates during the forum. There will be time at the end for a round of applause for all candidates. All right, we will get going. And we will start with candidate Nizamuddin, who will give his opening statement. 1 minute, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Elmhurst for inviting us today for this very important judicial panel. My name is Azam Nizamuddin. I'm running for Circuit Court Judge here in DuPage County. I have 20 years of legal experience, including working for a large law firm, a small law firm, and having my own practice. In addition, I am the civil chair of the DuPage County Bar Association section, and I'm a former editor-in-chief of the DuPage County Bar Association Journal. In addition, I provide CLEs, meaning continuing legal education courses, to judges and to lawyers in DuPage County, and I've done so for the Circuit Court of Cook County as well. In addition, I'm very active in the community. I give my time. I've been a civic and interfaith leader for about 25 years. I believe that this year is very important. It's important for the judiciary to represent all of the citizens of DuPage County, and I hope to ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
Candidate Stevens.
Thank you. Hello, I'm David Guy Stevens, and I'm running for DuPage County Circuit Court Judge. My background and experience uniquely qualifies me for this job. What distinguishes me is that I'm the only candidate who has been both an assistant state's attorney as well as an assistant public defender. So I've seen the law from both sides, and it has given me a unique perspective. It has also made me a better attorney. Having worked in both offices, I have gained extensive courtroom and trial experience. Experience that you just cannot get in the private sector. In addition to that, I have my own practice now. We handle criminal, civil, personal injury, and family law cases. Besides being an attorney, I'm a mentor to young people, attorneys, paralegals, and at-risk students from high schools. I volunteer for multiple organizations, and being a former public school teacher, I continue my strong support for public education by appearing and speaking at schools. Thank you very much.
Candidate Felice, your opening, please.
Thank you. I really appreciate an opportunity to come here today to speak to all of you. I've been a practicing lawyer for nearly 40 years. During that 40-year period, I've had a chance to handle hundreds of criminal and civil cases, including cases that involve jury trials, felony cases, cases on appeal, even cases that have gone to the Illinois Supreme Court. I've also, in that capacity of being a practice attorney, had a chance to work for a law firm, as well as having my own firm. I was very fortunate in that I was appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court unanimously, and I sit as a circuit court judge. I also have a history of being an Illinois State Bar President, DuPage County Bar President, served on the Supreme Court Rules Committee for three-year terms, and have served on various capacities to the community, including being a guardian ad litem in both adoption cases, disabled person cases, and matrimonial cases. I think I have the experience to continue on in my current capacity as a circuit court judge, and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Polinsky, your opening, please.
Well, thank you. Welcome this afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to address you all. You're seeing a group of gentlemen, all of whom are more than capable of doing the job, and I would respectfully suggest that of them, I have the broadest experience. I've been in the private practice of law since 1986. 1987 here in Illinois, where my law school sweetheart and I decided to settle down after we got married. I've been a partner in the law firm where I currently work since 1993, and I've had experience as a college professor for 25 years at the undergraduate and graduate level at North Central College in Naperville, where I graduated. I've been the editor of our DuPage County magazine for 3 times. I'm currently appointed by the Supreme Court to be the chair of the Committee on Character and Fitness, which is that group that decides who is fit to practice law, and would suggest that indicates the Supreme Court thinks I have high ethics, and you could support me for that. Thanks for your time.
Candidate Veenstra, your opening, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Rick Veenstra, and I'm a candidate for Circuit Court Judge. I'm a lifelong resident of DuPage County. I grew up in Addison and live in Wooddale with my wife, Angela. I'm a graduate of Elmhurst College and DePaul University College of Law. And after graduating from law school, I applied for and took the one job that I really wanted, and that was an assistant state's attorney in the criminal bureau in the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office. Over time and practicing in that area, I had the opportunity to move to the Civil Bureau and eventually became Deputy Chief of the Civil Bureau for the State's Attorney's Office, where I served as a lead counsel to the county board and for many of our countywide elected officials. 2.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to become the Corporation Counsel of the City of Aurora, Illinois' second largest community. I've been active in the DuPage County Bar Association as well as the Illinois State Bar Association and hold leadership positions in both organizations. I would humbly ask for your support.
Thank you. The first question today goes to candidate Stevens, and that question is, do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to legal help and the legal system? If not, what can be done to provide wider and better access?
Thank you. In every aspect of life, things can be much easily accomplished with money. That's why the judicial system has to keep in mind, for the people that are less fortunate, ways of evening the playing field. In criminal cases, there are no filing fees, and if you are determined to be indigent, legal counsel will be represented. So I believe civil cases are the ones where people can be left without recourse. It costs money to file a civil case. For example, a small claims case, if a person is wronged, then they have to pay money and they may not be able to do that. There are services available. What we need to do is educate the people who most need it and make things more easily attainable, so easily distributed. We need to do that with the attorneys, the circuit clerk, and the judiciary. Thank you.
Candidate Felice?
Thank you. I think access to legal system and legal justice is critical. We do have in DuPage County a help desk at the courthouse, which has lawyers that volunteer for the service to help people. The Supreme Court has a special committee for access to justice. And in fact, there are new rules that have come into place just recently, including limited scope representation that allows lawyers to separate out legal services so that some legal service can be supplied to the people that need it the most. Also be mindful that even Congress has Legal Service Corporation. In my capacity as the only state bar president, we've gone down to Washington, D.C. to rally the troops to get more support for the Legal Service Corporation, which supports individuals that are in need of legal services. The area of pro bono representation, self-represented people is a critical area, and they need to have better access to the court system. Thank you.
Candidate Polinsky.
Well, thank you. The answer is, of course, there is a limited access for a large segment of society. And let me tell you some of the things that I've been participating in helping to alleviate that. As Judge Felice referred to, there is a monthly help desk on the civil floor on the last Thursday of every month where lawyers come and answer simple questions about helping to move civil procedure matters through the eviction courts and small claims courts. And they do that at no charge. We have a DuPage County Bar Association Legal Aid Foundation, which provides free legal help both by the staff attorneys that we fund and by individual attorneys. And in my case, I've taken on several over the years and received awards for putting in the hours to help with family law matters where clients couldn't represent themselves. And finally, I think one of the last things that we could do is ask people to support that legal aid foundation. It's a lot of fun. You can get a lot of experience, and you can really know that you're helping people when you take on those cases. So lawyers should take those cases on, and people should fund it. Thank you.
Candidate Veenstra.
Thank you. A DuPage County citizen today has more access to legal help and information about the legal system than ever before. Thanks to the internet, statutes, case law, and even forums are available to unrepresented persons free of charge, often from the comfort of their own home or from their public library. An individual's ability to find information about lawyers and their reputations has never been greater thanks to this technological advancement. The Illinois Supreme Court has made access to justice a key priority and has adopted statewide rules, as Judge Felice mentioned, to ensure that trial courts share that priority. These rules now allow attorneys to represent clients on a limited scope basis, allowing for the client to better control his or her costs and determine the areas he or she needs the lawyer's assistance the most. Forms have been standardized, and lawyers must annually report whether the number of hours they have spent rendering pro bono assistance has been, and the number of hours that they've rendered the assistance.
Thank you. Candidate Nizamuddin.
The answer to your specific question about access to equal or adequate justice and legal help is, the answer is no. And I think based upon the answers of my colleagues, it's been a no for a long time. That's why the Illinois Supreme Court, along with many Supreme Courts around the country, have created commissions to try to address these issues. One of the things that we do as lawyers is we're required to also provide pro bono services, a certain number of hours per our MCLE cycle, which is the number of credits that we have to take. In addition, many other law firms provide pro bono services, but I don't think it's enough. I think particularly law firms that have a certain number of employees, like 25 or 50 or more, I think they should be able to provide much more pro bono legal services to clients. In the criminal justice area, there are some reforms being conducted, particularly with respect to trying to hire, I believe, more public defenders and making sure that public defenders are adequately resourced financially. Unfortunately, many are not throughout the state and around the country, and I think that's very important that we address that remedy. Thank you.
All right, the next question first goes to Candidate Felice. And that question is, what are the pros and cons of going to the bench as compared to practicing law?
Thank you. Well, I'm in a unique position since I did serve as an attorney for 40 years, and I certainly am quite aware of what the pros and cons are. For an attorney, the pros are, to some degree, you have your independence of client selection, and you certainly have the pleasure of serving clients successfully and getting not only financial rewards, but the reward for being a good lawyer and getting a result that a client wants. But there's a high degree of stress that goes with the practice of law. Many lawyers experience that on a daily basis. Also, be mindful, as a lawyer, you take a position, but as a judge, you're a decision maker. Judges in a very different capacity, and in serving in that capacity, I can tell you that as a decision maker, I'm in a unique position, as indicated, because now I can be one to try to really come to terms with the result that's most needed in a case, weighing the evidence, hearing the facts, and applying the rule of law. And that's the job of a judge. And we don't take sides. We try to then bring justice. Thank you.
Candidate Polinsky.
Well, as Judge Felice indicated, the nice thing for judges, aside from the fact that they get to be in control and make what they view to be a fair decision, is they don't have to worry about where their work's coming from. And as a practicing attorney, I can tell you that takes up a big amount of time for all of us. We have to figure out how it is that we can keep the doors open so that we can continue to serve our clients. The good thing from my perspective, for me at least, is I've been blessed to be married to a lawyer who also has a successful practice, and her support has allowed me to spread some of my time around, so that's been less of a stress for me. And just last week, I had a former client come in with a thank you note just because she was pleased that I had helped her out of a jam, and it was one of the pro bono cases I took, and we finally were able to get her some child support after many years. Thanks very much. I think that's the big difference.
Candidate Veenstra.
Thank you. Now, I too believe that the professional consistency and stability are two very attractive aspects of the judicial position. But it's important to remember that that comes at a price. Because of the station that judges have in the judiciary system, they are subject to more restrictive ethical rules than apply to other lawyers. A judge must always be constantly aware not only of actual conflicts, but the perception of conflicts of interest. They must refrain from speaking out on matters that are important to them or curtail their participation in activities in order to maintain the appearance of impropriety as well as impartiality. Other things would be the judge is going to be subject to the court schedule. There are aspects of the profession where you might have a little bit more control of your daily agenda, where you may be able to take time off in a different manner. When you have a court call that you're responsible for, that all goes away, and you have to be there. You can't phone it in, essentially. So.
Thank you. Candidate Nizamuddin.
I think first, the opportunity to serve the community as a public servant, I think, is a really tremendous honor and opportunity. I look forward to that. Secondly, with my background of 20 years of litigation, particularly as someone who's experienced in extensive bench trials, along with jury trials, I think my wide range of experience and knowledge and skills would be a tremendous added benefit to the bench here in DuPage, and I look forward to that. In particular, I think one of the challenges, of course, as my colleagues have alluded, is the fact that as private attorneys, we can turn down cases that we don't want based upon whether it's an area that we don't want to do or if it's a client that we don't want to represent. But judges have to take on cases that come before them, regardless of who the parties are and regardless of the nature of the case. So I think that's the one challenge. But I think, as I said, I think it's a really unique opportunity for us to serve the public. And I think that's a very, very important charge.
Candidate Stevens.
I believe in justice, and that's why I've chosen a career in law. And that's why I'm running for judge. Our justice system is the best in the world, but in order for us to keep it the best in the world, we need fair and impartial judges. And that's going to keep our democracy because the judges are the bedrock to our justice system. I love being an attorney. Attorneys have a very important role in the justice system, but we are advocates. We have to represent our clients to the best of our abilities. Sometimes that means that we are on the right side of justice, and sometimes it may not seem that way. But judges do not have those restraints. They listen to the facts and determine a result, make a ruling based in law. That's justice. And judges are the administrators of justice, and that's what's so appealing to me. And I believe my background has prepared me for that job.
Thank you. The next question will go first to candidate Polinsky. And that question is, how do you deal with difficult people, including peers, lawyers, clients, or litigants?
Well, first, patience is the watchword. We have to remember, and in particular in this profession, that we're adults and we ought to behave like them. Some of my favorite memories as a young lawyer were of judges who I came to respect, who had the good sense every once in a while to stop proceedings, wave the lawyers into chambers, and remind us that it wasn't our money or our freedom that we were fighting about, and that we should tone it back a little bit. And I'll admit that as a young guy, 33 years ago, I remember one judge in particular, Judge Sidmore, saying, "John, it's not your money. Do your best, but lower your voice." The way I deal with people now, as I've become a little bit more conscious of that, is I try to be patient, I try to be respectful, I try to de-escalate the situation whenever I can, and if necessary, I remove myself from the area of conflict until things can settle down. And I've seen a lot of judges who have that skill, and I'd like to suggest that I have that skill going forward as a judge. Thanks.
Candidate Veenstra.
Thank you. Well, one of the first things I often do is check to see if I'm the one who's being difficult. If I'm the one who's committing some behavior or causing some of the issue, it's a lot harder to kind of work through the problems unless I make some adjustments to my own behavior. So I think self-assessment is a good, important first step. But assuming that that's not where the issue is, I think the best thing to do is you try and talk through the issue as best you can with the other side. You try and see where the issue is and whether or not you can work through it. If not, perhaps you can work around it. Perhaps you can look at seeing if you could solve the underlying problem without getting at whatever the difficulty is. But I've always found that a little bit of a sense of humor, friendliness, and patience is really the key to solving most of those problems. And sometimes in a judicial setting, it may not be possible to be as patient as you'd like to, but you got to give it the best shot.
Thank you. Candidate Nizamuddin.
Thank you for the question. I call this the emotional intelligence question, and I think this is an important area of science and learning and training that is really important for all professions and not just lawyers and judges. And as someone who has actually done training on emotional intelligence to a variety of different people, I think it's really important that we begin with a presumption that all people are good and well-intentioned regardless of their situation. I always try to exercise patience and restraint with people who may, have some ill will or some kind of bias against me personally. And I always try to move on and look at it from a professional perspective. I remember taking depositions where opposing counsel were being very difficult or objecting constantly, and I was always taught from my mentors in litigation and trial work that you simply just keep on going forward, make the record of the objections, make the record of your response, and move on. Don't take it personally, and then you have a record you can bring back to the judge when it comes time to demonstrate that. So I believe that's the way to be. Be professional, patient, and treat people with respect.
Thank you. Candidate Stevens.
In a word, respectfully. I was told a long time ago when I was a young attorney by a mentor, take a few minutes and listen before beginning. The matters are extremely important for the people that are involved in them, the people that call you up, the potential clients. Just listen to them. Sometimes they just need to talk, tell you their story, rant, vent a little bit. Let them do it. And then I may know immediately what to do because I've done it a million times or how to proceed. But take some time, show some compassion, be patient, and be respectful. I've been in front of hundreds of judges, and the ones that control their courtrooms the best are the ones that do it with respect. They can be firm while still being understanding of the gravity of court.
Thank you. Candidate Felice.
I think it's critical that lawyers as well as judges have good management skills, and one of the management skill areas is dealing with difficult people. I've had the benefit of handling family law cases and concentrating in that area for over 20 years, and you cannot find a more contentious area than oftentimes family law cases, but many times it's not what you're hearing that the litigant thinks the issue is. It's tied into an emotional state that the individual is in. It's very important, I think, as a judge, that you exercise good temperament, you try to diffuse the situation, you try to make the litigants understand that you're going to listen and you're going to give them an ample opportunity to hear their side. And then you're going to rule applying the facts and the law, and you're going to do so in a calm, collected, focused manner, trying to make the people understand that it's not who yells the loudest, but oftentimes somebody that speaks the softest says the most important things that you need to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go first to candidate Veenstra, and that question is this. Do you believe that the current lack of diversity on the circuit court creates implicit bias in the system?
I think implicit bias is going to be present regardless of what the complexion of the judiciary looks like. Everybody brings their own experience, their own views on life to the bench, no matter what station in life they happen to be in. And those are going to be, that is what the essence of implicit bias is. The steps that you take to get past that, to make sure that you're evaluating the case based on the law, based on the facts, and not based on who's standing in front of you, is what the next step is. And so I think the answer to the question is implicit bias exists, but it doesn't exist as a result of the composition of the judiciary.
Thank you. Candidate Nizamuddin.
Absolutely. I think that, let's be real, 30% of the residents of DuPage County are people of color, of different cultures, a different race, and different religions. Today, unfortunately, the judiciary does not in any way come close to representing all of the people of DuPage. Why that is, we can have a discussion for that for the next day or some other time. But I think that the fact that there are not a single person of color, of diversity, of race or religion on the bench, particularly the circuit court bench of DuPage County, speaks volumes about whether judges can understand when people of different cultures, different experiences, different traumas come before them, and whether they can really empathize with them and not just apply the facts and law, which is important, but also have the requisite patience and justice that each judge must do. So I think that this is an important issue, particularly this year, and I believe that having diversity also on the bench, in addition to the bar associations and every other sector of society, is important. Thank you.
Candidate Stevens.
The answer to the question is yes. Implicit bias is everywhere. Everyone has it. You have to question yourself. I believe one of the candidates, Mr. Veenstra, said you have to question yourself. You have to decide when you're trying to be fair and impartial, are you being fair and impartial? Are you basing it on the facts? Are you basing it on the circumstances? Or are you basing it in some part, in some kind of bias that you may not even know you have? That's what implicit bias is. So always be questioning yourself. I agree with Azam. I think diversity is important. I'm part of the Democratic Party, and I believe one of the positions or one of the important things that a circuit court does is we select the associate judges, and we need to use our experiences and our knowledge to select a diverse judiciary.
Thank you. Candidate Felice.
Well, first I want to tell you that here in DuPage County, the 8th Judicial Circuit, we do have some diversity that has taken place, and we do have persons of color that are on the bench, and I think that's important to make it clear that we're cognizant of that as being an important characteristic for the bench. Yes, there's implicit bias, and I think it's important that each of us examine what our own implicit prejudices might be so that we can be certain that we bring a high degree of procedural fairness to the administration of justice. People have to have trust in the system. If they think they're being treated fairly, regardless of their station in life, regardless of their color of their skin or their gender or their religion or whatever their station in life may be, they're going to have confidence in the system and feel that they can get their day in court and a fair shot of having the outcome that they hope to get. And even if it isn't the way they wanted it, at least they thought they had a fair opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Polinsky.
Well, we all agree that there's implicit bias irrespective of what we look or what our gender might be. And that's a given. We all have our products of our own upbringing and our own life experiences. The solution, I would suggest, is to make the sole criterion in choosing judges merit. It's got to be the perception that merit is the sole criterion, and it's got to be the actual fact that merit selection is the sole criterion, because then the bench will represent the people who are going to law school and graduating, and it will represent the county. How to solve the problem on a day-to-day basis if you're a judge, and of course we've got a very limited diversity in this particular panel, so that might make sense for some folks, but how to solve it on a day-to-day basis is be self-aware. Make sure that as you're reaching decisions, you're aware that perhaps your initial reaction about somebody's credibility might or not be affected by the fact that they don't resemble you. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question goes first to candidate Nizamuddin, and that question is, what is your opinion on tort reform caps on non-economic damages?
Well, I think that, like everything else, there is always call for some kind of reform, whether it's tort reform because of the excessive awards by juries, for example, whether it's also punitive damages, et cetera, or whether it's about bail reform in Illinois. Like everything else, I think it's very important that you have a wide variety of perspectives that are brought into the discussion, whether in this case it's the business community or the plaintiff's trial bar community, to come in and sit down and try to come up with a formula in which people can not only feel that when they've been a victim of some kind of tort, that they are adequately compensated, and similarly whereby businesses feel that they can continue to engage in commerce and business activity, but not at the risk of perhaps excessive liability.
Thank you. Candidate Stevens.
Well, my personal feeling on tort reform, limiting someone's ability to collect based on the seriousness of their injuries, it's kind of irrelevant, because as a judge, I have to follow the law, whatever the law is. This is a legislation matter, and this needs to be, if you feel strongly about it, it needs to be legislated, and you need to call your legislators. You know, I can't really answer this question, not because I don't have my own personal opinion, but because I'm a judicial candidate, and when these things are in front of me in the court system, I have to follow the law as it's written. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Felice.
Well, I think there's certainly two sides to that area of tort reform, but I would tell you that every individual deserves their day in court. And a person that is in court has a right to expect that the law will be even-handedly applied to them, and their case and its unique facts will be considered, whether it be a bench trial with a judge sitting alone or a jury trial where their peers will decide the outcome. And I think in the area of tort reform, certainly it is true that all judges need to follow the law. We're not legislators. We don't make the law. As judges, our key is to follow the rule of law, and it is a legislative issue. However, I do think it's important that every litigant feels that their case and its unique facts are what is being decided, and not just an overall view of limits on how they might be perceived. So I think it's important that you note that. But again, this is one of those issues that is truly that which is a legislative determination, with the judge following the law at hand.
Thank you. Candidate Polinsky.
Well, as Mr. Stevens and Judge Felice pointed out, the Code of Judicial Ethics applies to us as candidates, so we can't give you an opinion or a statement that would tend to suggest how we would rule on a case that could come before us. That said, tort reform was found to be unconstitutional under the Illinois Supreme Court, under our Constitution, in approximately the mid to late 1990s. And I can tell you historically that the people who were driving that were, that is the imposition of the tort reforms at the time, damage caps, punitive damages caps, and so forth, were from one particular side of the aisle. And so you're going to have a constitutional amendment before it's likely to happen here. That said, as everybody's already also indicated, as a trier of fact, a trial judge in those cases where he or she would be doing that would want to make sure that they thought long and hard about whether or not the injuries that are being compensated are being measured properly and proven up fairly rigorously.
Thank you. Candidate Veenstra.
And to Mr. Polinsky's point, I think it would be unlikely that the state would see any form of tort reform anytime soon. You know, one of the things I learned early on as an assistant state's attorney is to recognize that the cases that you're handling, the people that you have in front of you, are not widgets. Everyone is different. Every case is a little bit different. So I think even if the legislature were inclined to do a tort reform package, I think it would be very difficult to apply the rule fairly and consistently in a lot of the cases. So I think my answer is the same as many of the others. As a judge, your responsibility is to apply the law, and if the law is of the state that you have a cap on non-economic damages, you apply the cap. If it's not there, then you apply the law that exists.
Thank you. The next question first goes to Candidate Stevens. Do we need further bail reform?
Well, again, it's a legislative thing. Bail reform was, I believe, 2017 to 2018. I think there was another one possibly in 2019. Don't quote me on that. But Bail reform is important because there is a problem with people who can't afford to post bond or bail to get out on pre-sentence issues. So if you've been accused of a crime, you've been arrested, and you're in jail, there's a number of considerations a judge must consider in order to set bond and a bail amount. And most of those things are not whether or not the person can afford it, but the bail cannot be punitive. So I think bail reform is good the way it is. It just needs to be applied properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Felice.
There is bail reform that's taken place in Illinois, and that is reform which puts individuals charged with a crime into one of two tracks, an A or B track. So if they're a nonviolent offender and ones that are low-level felonies or misdemeanors, typically they're going to get a bond without posting money, a recognizance bond, an agreement to come back to court. More serious cases and those involving violent crimes do require a monetary bond, but we also must recognize that the reason behind bail bonding is to weigh the risk of the individual defendant to the public at large, the risk of the public, taking into consideration the history of the defendant, nature of the crime, and the likelihood of this defendant to appear in the future. So those are the hallmark considerations when bond is being set. It's probably one of the most important things in a criminal case, because it's very unfortunate to see someone sit in jail who is presumed to be innocent when they can't get out of jail pending a trial that's going to be coming in the future. And history has shown that it's important that they have their opportunity to be bonded if possible. Thank you.
Candidate Polinsky.
Thank you. Well, they did take a shot at it, the General Assembly, in 2018, and there's been a lot of pushback as to how it's been effectuated. And that points out to me the difficulty I see almost every time a legislature tries to impose a one-size-fits-all solution to a problem. The unique thing about being a judge, if you're not having your hands tied by people who insist upon one-time-fits-all criteria, is that you have the ability to exercise your discretion. And that discretion needs to be exercised with an eye towards either ensuring that the alleged offender is likely to show up for his or her trial versus protecting society from somebody who potentially could be a danger to society as a whole. And I think largely if you overly tie the judge's hands, you remove that discretion and you don't do society a good service.
Thank you. Candidate Veenstra.
Thank you. Now, I think discretion is a very important thing when it comes to setting bail. Again, the conditions, as we've heard, for bail are whether or not a level of bail is required to protect the public and to ensure the defendant's presence in court. And what we've seen since the bail reform went through over the last several years is a large number of defendants who, while they may not be committing other crimes, aren't appearing in court on schedule. And what that essentially will lead to is delayed justice for their alleged victims, a delayed trial, and perhaps evidence spoilage over a period of time. So I do think we need to take a look at this and look at seeing whether or not the General Assembly would see fit to give the judges a little bit more of their discretion back.
Thank you. Candidate Nizamuddin.
Well, I think the passage of bail reform in Illinois in 2017 and signed into law by Governor Rauner was a good first step. And the reason for that is that judges, state's attorneys, public defenders, legislators, everybody who has game in the system realized that this is not working. Why? Because it was a financial incentive imposed on keeping people locked up because they did not have money to bail themselves out. And statistics have shown that something across 40 to 50% of people who were held incarcerated for many, many months or years ultimately were deemed to be innocent when their cases went to trial. So because of that situation, bail reform was passed. But now, right now, the Illinois Supreme Court, led by Justice Ann Burke, has started a commission in which the report should be coming out pretty soon about whether we need further reform. And what Justice Ann Burke's commission is doing is looking at what we call risk assessment. I think the other question that needs to be included in that assessment is civil rights and the idea of human freedom and liberty.
Thank you. The next question goes first to candidate Felice, and it is this. What do you think of the movement to eliminate cash bonds in Illinois?
Certainly, there is a movement to eliminate cash bonds, and in many instances, one could argue that the current bail reform is tending towards that direction. However, again, as a judge, you have to follow that bail law that's in effect when you're sitting on the bench. As far as the arguments, pro and con, one argument is that there should be no cash bail bonds, and that it should be based on a different type of system. Some pretrial information that's applied on every defendant, other alternatives, possibly monitoring alternatives should be considered first. Certainly that is an argument. However, in the most serious cases where people are being hurt by an offender and the public having a risk for serious offenses being further committed, as well as a history of failure to attend court in the past, those are situations that have to be considered on a case-by-case basis, and a no cash bond system would be difficult in those matters.
Candidate Polinsky.
Well, there's a reason they take the passports from alleged offenders like Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Weinstein. Money's not going to make a difference to those gentlemen. So if they were inclined to flee, they would have been able to do so irrespective of what cash bond was posted. Now, the fact of the matter is that in most the systems where people do post a cash bond, it'll be set at one number, and only 10% of that cash needs to be brought forward. So you could say the solution would be for those folks where there's a big offense, cash isn't going to make a difference, so leave the discretion to the judge to ensure appearance. But as Judge Felice suggested, you also have to balance that against the fact that some folks are repeat offenders, some folks are inclined to violence, and some folks are just disinclined to show up to serve or to see their day in court, and you've got to be able to fashion an individual solution for that problem.
Thank you. Candidate Veenstra.
And I think that's part of the problem, finding something to replace the cash bail. Obviously, in certain situations, cash bail, even a small bail amount, may seem disproportionate based on the crime and the particular victim, but at the same particular defendant, but at the same time, it's necessary to protect the public and to secure that person's attendance in court. So you'd have to look to see if the General Assembly would, again, give the judges more discretion, give us some more ability in terms of electronic monitoring or other types of things, where we would know that when it comes time for that person's day in court, that person does appear.
Thank you. Candidate Nizamuddin.
Well, the law currently in effect allows a judge to give a no cash bond to a defendant for nonviolent offenses, and there's, as it was mentioned earlier, there's two tiers for this. So if it's a nonviolent offense like theft or something like that, then typically they have the discretion to do that. The question is, should it be completely eliminated? And I think with respect to violent offenders who have done serious harm and injury and pose a public safety, I think we have to be very careful about not imposing any kind of cash bond situation there, simply because incarceration is important in that situation, and you want to make sure that they come back to court as well and don't flee the jurisdiction. So again, I just think that we need to continue this discussion and not assume that the passage of one law or act is a panacea for this issue, but further introduce other issues besides simply risk assessment, which, as I mentioned before, includes civil rights and the human need for freedom.
Thank you. Candidate Stevens.
Again, this is a legislative issue. However, cash bond is basically collateral. It gives an incentive for the defendant to show up in court in the future so he doesn't lose that money. But I have seen over the last few years more and more going away from cash bonds and more setting bond conditions. Bond conditions can be electronic home monitoring, could be stay-away orders for victims, stay away from their victims. It could be drug counseling. A lot of times it's just pretrial services. You check in with pretrial services, they evaluate you, you do what they say, and if you violate those conditions, then they can revoke your bond. So I have seen more and more that bails aren't being set as much as bond conditions are being applied.
Thank you. The next question is first for candidate Polinsky, and it is this. Are there any judges you admire, and if so, why?
There are several I admire, and for different reasons. Currently sitting, I can think of one judge for whom I have great admiration because of not only her longevity on the bench, but her incredible courtroom demeanor. She's always respectful, and she always allows people to have their say without it getting out of control. And I recall a number of years ago having a trial, and after the trial, when it was appropriate to talk about it, when the time for appeal had run and so forth, she was kind enough to compliment me by saying that you had the perfect demeanor for that case. Because in that particular situation, it was lawyers who were litigants and took it very personally on their side. There are other judges who I admire here in DuPage County because they've got senses of humor and don't take themselves too seriously, but they do not suggest in any way while they're conducting court that they're not taking the process seriously. So luckily, I've had the advantage of getting to meet quite a few judges who I respect and admire.
Candidate Veenstra.
As a young prosecutor, I had the chance to appear in front of one of the judges in the misdemeanor division, and he had the reputation of being a stickler, very, very protocol-oriented. And it wasn't an assignment that a lot of young assistant state's attorneys sought out. But being in that courtroom and watching the manner in which he took every case seriously, every defendant seriously, making sure that every step in the process, whether it was a warrant on a failure to appear case, whether it was a jury instruction, every step of the process he took seriously, he took deliberatively. But more importantly, he taught the lawyers how to do their jobs very well. So I have a great deal of respect for that kind of jurist and that judge in particular.
Thank you. Candidate Nizamuddin.
I've had many judges as well that I've worked in front of, worked for, or appeared before who I have a lot of respect for. One of the first ones in DuPage County was Judge Ken Popejoy, because when we submit, in civil cases, we tend to file a lot of briefs in writing. And some of them can be very extensive with lots of exhibits. And I recall very frequently that whenever we had cases in front of him, he read every single brief before we stepped up to the bench. And that's a big, big deal because a lot of judges, in my experience, would not do that. Secondly, Judge Bonnie Wheaton, one of our senior judges in DuPage County. I had a trial before her. It was a very lengthy trial, which lasted several days. And I just remember her having just complete command of the courtroom, but also really listening carefully to the witnesses and admonishing us when we got a little too carried away from our cross-examinations or our direct examinations. So those two judges I have a tremendous amount of respect for.
Thank you. Candidate Stevens.
I've had the very good fortune of being in front of hundreds of judges, and most of them are great. I have respect for many judges. One happens to be sitting in the back of this courtroom right now, or I guess it's not a courtroom, whatever it is. But what I look for in a judge is someone who's respectful, who's fair, and I know what to expect from them. One of the judges, he's an associate judge right now, but I just really enjoy being in his courtroom, is Judge Deaton. He is no nonsense. He's not rude. He's not overly glowing. He's just no nonsense, all about the law, and I know what to expect. And that's what I want when I'm an attorney in front of a judge, and I respect that very much. And I would hope to model when I'm a judge after him and others like him.
Thank you. Candidate Felice.
I think temperament is the key. I think you'll find most people come to court, it's very often their first time in court. They're looking for somebody to understand their situation, realizing that that court appearance may be one of the most important times of their life. And they look to the judge for a degree of transparency, empathy, compassion in administration of justice. And I think if the people in the courtroom feel that that's how they've been dealt with, that's an important step to gain, I think, an appreciation for the justice system. There's no reason a judge should make the process harder than it needs to be. Judges need to have that element of calm, collected, focused atmosphere in that courtroom So there is a feeling among the lawyers as well as the litigants alike that it's a difficult experience, but it's been made the best under the circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all of the time we have for questions, so we'll ask the candidates to move to their closing statements, please. And the first to deliver a closing will be candidate Veenstra.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate everything this afternoon, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for their courtesy and their hospitality and for the importance of doing this in the community. I feel that I have the experience as a former prosecutor, as a former top lawyer to the DuPage County Board and many of our elected officials, and now as the Corporation Counsel, the City Attorney for the City of Aurora. I have a broad range of experience and background that really qualifies me for the position. I've had the opportunity to meet with a lot of community leaders in the area and have earned their support, but I would really hope to have the opportunity to earn your support, not just in the primary election, but in the general election in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nizamuddin.
Thanks again to the League of Women Voters for inviting us today and to my colleagues for showing up today as well. I think that all of us here sitting on the dais are exceptional candidates. I think we're all qualified for the bench, but I just ask you one thing. At this particular time in our country, at this particular time in DuPage County, with 4 vacancies available, what is in the best interest of all the DuPage citizens, and what is in the interest of the judiciary? And I ask you to consider my candidacy as someone who has spent 20 years not only practicing law, being part of the entire legal community, being a former professor, teaching lawyers and judges, and being an advocate for justice for many, many years for all communities. And I think because of those reasons, I believe that I am exceptionally qualified for your vote and also for your support. Thank you.
Candidate Stevens.
Thank you. I'm David Guy Stevens, and I'm running for DuPage County Circuit Court Judge. And like I said earlier, my backgrounds and experiences have prepared me for this job and uniquely qualify me for it. Besides seeing the law from all different angles and both sides, I've practiced multiple different areas of law. I have extensive trial experience, 170 trials, 26 jury trials, and well over 1,000 hearings on a multitude of different issues. I am a mentor for young people. I provide pro bono service work for victims of violence. I am a leader. I sit on the executive board of the Robert E. Jones American Inns of Court DuPage chapter for the last 2 years. In order for me to accomplish my goal, I'm going to need your support. I'm going to ask for your vote. Vote for David Guy Stevens for Circuit Court Judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Felice.
I cannot think of a more important job than that as a judge. To sit in judgment of another person is a great responsibility, and I have that responsibility on a daily basis. I think it's important that you not only have the experience, but you're also a person of a high degree of integrity, concern, compassion, and understanding of what the public is going through when they appear in a courtroom. The qualifications of the judge are important, but as mentioned earlier, the temperament of the judge is extremely important, and the understanding of what it means to be in the process. I never make a judgment concerning another person unless I've been very thoughtful and feel I've given it my all to try to do the right thing and apply the rule of law. And that is my mission, and I would ask that you allow me to continue in my role as a judge, applying those 40 years of experience and considering my other characteristics so that I can continue to serve the public. Public's not here to serve me. I'm here to serve them. And that's been my mission and continues to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Polinsky.
Well, all of us are running for the same slot. So although there are 4 particular slots that are open, 3 of us are running for the Republican nomination and 2 of us are running for the Democratic nomination. So what you're looking at is the pool that you have to choose from. And let me say, I don't think that I'm entitled to be a judge. I don't think I'm owed the opportunity to be a judge. The more important question is, what are the voters? Who are the voters entitled to have on the bench? Who do they deserve as their judge? And they want somebody who's the best and the brightest and who's most likely to inspire confidence in how the system's worked. We're here to replace a gentleman who was removed from the bench for misconduct. I would respectfully suggest that the Supreme Court agrees that I have a high degree of ethics when it appointed me to be the chair of the Committee on Character and Fitness. I've been highly recommended every time I've applied for the position of associate judge by the DuPage County Judiciary Committee since 1995, and I have a Martindale-Hubbell ethical rating of AV. I would respectfully ask for your vote. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. That ends our forum. We have many to thank, of course. First of all, let's thank the candidates again with a round of applause. Thank you to the audience for your excellent demeanor and attention here today. And also thanks to the members of the Elmhurst chapter of the League of Women Voters who worked hard to put this together today. And last and not least, if you wish to view candidate information about these candidates and all candidates on your ballot, go to the online IllinoisVoterGuide.org. That should be up and running by about February 6th. All candidates on your ballot will be listed. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, please vote on or before March 17th. Thank you.
Thank you.
I count, you count,
everyone counts
Elmhurst. The city of Elmhurst is home to over 45,000 residents.
The U.S. Constitution mandates that everyone in the country be counted every 10 years. The United States counts everyone living in the country on April 1st, regardless of their nationality or living situation.
Completing the census is mandatory. It's a way to participate in our democracy and say, I count. Taking part is your civic duty.
The census is about fair representation at the federal level. Every 10 years, the results of the census are used to determine how many seats each state gets in the House of Representatives.
After each decade's census, congressional, state, and local legislative district boundaries are redrawn to account for population shifts, including Elmhurst ward boundaries.
The census is a snapshot in time. It aims to count the entire population of our country and the location each person usually lives. The census asks questions of people in homes and group living situations, including how many people live or stay in each home, as well as the sex, age, and race of each person. The goal is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place.
When you respond to the census, you help Elmhurst get its fair share of the more than $675 billion per year in federal funds spent on schools, hospitals, roads, public works, and other vital programs. Federal funds, grants, and support to states, counties, and communities are based on population totals and breakdowns by sex, age, race, and other factors. The community benefits most when the census counts everyone.
The census is a valuable tool for improving communities across the country. Funds distributed from the census equate to approximately $6 million annually for the city of Elmhurst. That allocation provides funding for local projects such as road resurfacing and supports community initiatives from public safety preparedness to quality of life and economic development growth. If members of the community don't respond to the census, Elmhurst may not receive the funding it deserves.
Your census responses are safe and secure. The Census Bureau is required by law to protect any personal information collected and keep it strictly confidential. Your answers may only be used to produce statistics. They cannot be used for law enforcement purposes or to determine your personal eligibility for government benefits. To be clear, there will not be a citizenship question and respondents will not be required to submit their Social Security number.
2020 will introduce the first modern census, the first to be available online. The days of the old-fashioned, long-form census are over. Because getting an accurate count is so important, the process is designed to be fast and easy. On average, it takes no more than 10 minutes to answer the questions on the census.
Beginning in March 2020, when it's time to respond, households will receive an invitation in the mail from the U.S. Census Bureau. Every household will have the option of responding online, by mail, or by phone. Households that don't respond in one of these ways will be visited by a census taker to collect the information in person. In the 2010 census, only 86% of Elmhurst households responded. You can help create a better future for Elmhurst by responding to the 2020 census. Providing an up-to-date and accurate count of our population is critical.
With an accurate snapshot of the Elmhurst community, the Park District is able to plan, budget, and develop new parks and programs that will be beneficial to the Elmhurst community.
An estimated 5% of children under the age of 5 weren't counted in the 2010 census. Census results help us understand how demographics, including income, education levels, and population size, are changing in Elmhurst. Having an accurate picture of all residents, including children 5 and younger, allows District 205 to engage in long-term planning to meet the needs of current and future students.
The Elmhurst Public Library, Elmhurst School District 205, the Elmhurst Park District, and City of Elmhurst are committed partners in making sure all of Elmhurst is counted accurately in the 2020 census.
Each week leading up to the census deadline, you can learn more about your fellow Elmhurst residents who are likewise committed to being counted in 2020. Join us in being counted.
Remember, the census counts all people living or staying at an address, not just the person or family who owns or rents the property. So be sure to include your entire household.
To learn more about the U.S. Census, local programming, and where to find assistance in responding to Census 2020, please visit the city's website, elmhurst.org/census2020.